Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Rock Bottom Airsoft. It's good to see you again. If this is your first time here, then as always, it is good to see you and I hope you're going to stick around. Okay, well, welcome to our weekend video. Hey, we're going to do something a little bit different today. Well, I say different, it's not that much different than what we normally do. I seem to say that every time. No, what we're going to do today is you're probably going to have to listen to me waffle on a little bit. You probably know from the thumbnail what we're doing anyway. We're going to have a look at 5 what I would call Airsoft myths, aimed primarily at you new players out there, or if you're a newer player or just getting into Airsoft, or you know, it could be useful for you if you're an experienced player and never really thought about these issues before. Now, please remember guys that a lot of this is going to be my opinion, based on my experiences of playing Airsoft, teching Airsoft replicas, and generally being from a more technical background in my career. So with that in mind, what we're going to have a look at today is just 5. I mean, there's a lot more than this, and if you want more videos like this, then let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to do more of them. 5 of what I think are Airsoft myths. Now, we'll go through them in turn, because some of them, yeah, you can go either way. But again, this is my opinion. I'm open to debate on it. So if any of you guys completely disagree with what I'm saying, let me know in the comments. I'll always respond to a comment. Might not get back to you straight away, but I will always respond. And we'll have a look at these 5 items. So without further ado, let's have a look at the first Airsoft myth that seems to grate on me anyway. And most of this stuff I've gathered from social media and some of the communities and posts that I see on there, that, you know, the advice people give and the things that seem to float about, the general opinions. These are things that I wouldn't necessarily need, you know, say that you have to do as a new player, and would be more of a myth. So the first thing we're looking at here is a couple of upgrades. We've got a hot rubber and we've got a piston. Just 2 things I grabbed out of my Spurs bin, to be honest, guys. But they're there to say that, you know, you'll see a lot of people say, oh, you have to upgrade. You have to upgrade. They buy a brand new replica, they're new into the game, and I've seen so many posts where people say, I've just received whatever replica, what should I upgrade first? And then everybody will say, oh, change the hot rubber, change the barrel, change this, change that. I don't think you need to do that, guys. To me, that's a bit of a myth. If you've bought a replica and you've only just got it and you've not took it out to a game yet, then maybe try playing with it first. Give it a go. You never know, it might meet your expectations and then some. So if your replica, you receive it and you take it to its first game and it shoots and does what you want it to do, then why bother upgrading at that point? If it's doing what you need to do, then don't upgrade it, guys. Play with that replica until it breaks, and then when something breaks, then maybe upgrade it. You know, change the part that's broken, upgrade that part. It is cohesive, you can't just upgrade one part or another normally. But, you know, if you want to go with a full upgrade, wait until the replica breaks and you need to open it up and put some new parts in. At that point, that'd be the time to upgrade. Or if you're still happy with it at the point when it breaks and it lasts you for years, then at that point just change out for standard parts if you're still happy with it. There isn't a necessity to upgrade our Airsoft replicas, guys. Some of the newer replicas that are coming out these days have awesome performance straight out of the box. Yes, there's upgrades you can do for longevity, serviceability, you know, basically things that'll make it last longer and be a bit tougher on the field. But you know, if it's working okay for you, then why touch it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's something that you can live by, and it definitely applies to our Airsoft replicas. So if you've just got a new replica, guys, and you haven't used it, you haven't fielded it yet, try it out first. See if you're happy with the performance. If you find that you use it in the field and you're lacking in one certain aspect, then at least then you have a plan on how you want to upgrade the replica, what you expect your results to be. If you go out on the field and you find that your new replica is being outranged by a lot of the other players and they're getting better range than you, then yeah, you could maybe start looking at hop-up components such as the rubber, the nub, the hop chamber, maybe even a new barrel. But on the whole, guys, it's a bit of a myth that you get a new replica and you've got to start ripping it apart straight away and changing parts on it. I don't do it, and I do all my own teching, as you know, on my guns, so it doesn't, cost me a lot of money to do this work. It's just parts, and I still don't rip a new replica apart until I've used it. I want to find out how it performs in stock form before I go for it on the upgrades. So that's myth number one, guys. Don't get a new replica and just rip it apart and start upgrading it. Try it in the field first, guys. You don't have to upgrade. Not all of our replicas, especially the more pricey ones, are going to be performance deficit from the box. Some of them will outperform a lot of upgraded replicas, or should we say upgraded. Sometimes upgrades can make replicas worse. It depends who does the work, and it depends what parts you use. There's a lot of trial and error. So that's a biggie. You don't need to upgrade from the get-go, guys. Try a replica out before you start thinking about upgrades, and then you have a plan on what results you expect from your upgrades. So there we go, that's number one. Number two is, well, I've got a spring. I just thought we'd show a spring because we're talking about feet per second, or joules. We're talking about muzzle energy, guys. We're talking about the power output of your replica. Now, there seems to have been an ongoing myth for many years in Airsoft that feet per second, or muzzle energy, equals range. It doesn't, guys. In Airsoft, that just does not work out. And it certainly doesn't work out for accuracy either. Now, it is a complicated issue. When we're talking about heavyweight BBs and snipers, to push those heavier BBs, then yes, of course, you're going to need more muzzle energy in order to push those heavier BBs and hop them effectively. But far more important in our Airsoft replicas is consistency from your gearbox for your air output, and also the performance of your hop-up system. They are the main contributors to accuracy and range in Airsoft. It's not barrel length, and it certainly isn't power, guys. You only have to look at the ever popular Tokyo Marui replicas. Now, people swear by those, and out of the box, Tokyo Marui replicas are shooting way lower than the FPS limits we have in the UK, for example, and certainly lower than the FPS in some of the other countries that you guys playing out there. Such as in the US, I think in the USA, in America there, you have much higher FPS limits than we have here in the UK. And even then, a Tokyo Marui will still perform accurately and with good ranges with low FPS. So don't let muzzle energy confuse you for accuracy and range. You can have a replica that's shooting 700 feet per second, but it can't hit a barn door at 20 yards. So the performance of your replica is not purely based on the power output. So again, this does go back to upgrades. If you get a new replica and you chrono it and it's only shooting at about 280 feet per second on a 0.25 gram BB, don't straight away think, oh, good grief, I'm going to have to change the spring out and make that replica shoot with a higher FPS or more muzzle energy, then I'll get more range and more accuracy. It just doesn't work that way, guys. You could do that and find that it totally ruins the balance of the replica, or you get very minimal gains for putting much more strain on your replica. Or it might be that it's not the spring that's the problem. You might have inconsistencies and you've got bad air seal. So there's other things you can look at. It's normally down to your nozzle and your bucking seal, maybe the seal around the bucking and the barrel. There's many things can affect consistency, especially there's things within the gearbox, such as your piston, your cylinder. But don't get tied down for putting big, whopping, heavy springs into a new replica to up your feet per second or up your muzzle energy, thinking that that's going to save all problems. It simply won't, guys. Feet per second muzzle energy is not everything. As I say, a well set up replica with a low muzzle energy is going to beat a phenomenally powerful replica that's poorly set up every time. So that's number 2, guys. Kind of links in a bit with number 1. Don't bang in the massive spring because you've been told that FPS is everything and you've got to be right on the limit of the chrono. Because that's another bad thing with FPS, guys. If you do get right on the limit of the chrono and then you go to a different site from your home site and their chrono reads you as over, you're not going to be able to use that replica anyway, guys. So that's something to bear in mind. It is a myth that FPS equals performance. It simply does not. Okay, guys? So that's number 2. Number 3, we're making our way through these pretty quick, is eye protection. And I want to get this clear, guys. Do not buy poor quality eye protection. The myth I'm looking at is don't cheap out on your eye pro. Now, depends what you mean by cheap out on it. You can get cheap eye protection. It's a myth that you can't. These are Bolly trackers. These are what I use and have always used in my entire airsoft career. I have always used Bolly trackers or Bolly tracker 2s. These are not expensive. These are affordable. You can get a pair of these from DIY stores or, you know, trade factors. You get them for around about between 10 to 20 pounds, British pounds. So they're normally about 13, 15 British pounds. But it depends where you go. Here in the UK, most DIY centres will have Bolly Tracker 2s. Ensure that they are original, buy from a reputable supplier. And that, as you can probably agree, guys, is affordable. It's not expensive. So when I say about the myth of that, is that you can't get cheap eye pro. These show that you can, and these eye pro are effective, they're full seal, and they're certified. And this is what I wanted to get onto, guys. You want certified eye protection. You only get one pair of eyes. You do not want them getting damaged, so you don't want to be uncautious, shall we say, when you buy iPro. If you're buying iPro that isn't certified, I wouldn't use it, guys. These are certified. Make sure that, for example, here in the UK, they're kite marked and they're certified for impact resistance. So always check the certification of impact resistance. Here in the UK, I recommend B. That's what I tend to use, and that is what these are certified at for impact resistance. Basically, they test them in the factory with a steel ball bearing. But we won't get into that too much. The point I'm making is there is a myth that you have to spend an absolute fortune on your eye protection. I always recommend getting lower face protection as well, which again, steel mesh for lower face is absolutely fine. Pick those up for around about 20 British pounds. You've got a pair of certified safety glasses here that are full seal. They come with a head strap, which I recommend using. And these retail for around about 15 British pounds, so more than affordable. Get yourself some Revision anti-fog wipes or a reputable brand of anti-fog cream or wipe, and they won't fog up. They don't for me, as long as I use anti-fog on the inside of the lens. And as I say, these absolutely fine. I've done my own testing on a pair of these. They don't crack, they don't shatter. They are a superb pair of safety glasses, Bolly being a well-known brand of safety eyewear, and these are affordable. So the myth is that you have to spend a fortune on your eye protection. You don't, but it's nothing to do with cost. It's to do with certification. So that is the myth. Don't think that by spending £100 on a pair of eye protection or a mask that you get on eBay or you get from some other site, it will protect your eyes. That's not guaranteed. The cost does not guarantee it will protect your eyes. Certification protects your eyes. Ensure that any eye protection you get is certified. So it's not cost, it's making sure they're certified for impact resistance, suitable for the game we play, guys. And I'm sorry to go on about that a bit, but I don't want to see any of you guys getting hurt out there. And if you're a newer player, I have encountered newer players at my home site that turn up with their own safety glasses and they aren't certified. So they might look the part, but they're not certified. So to me, if it's never been certified, you cannot guarantee its impact resistance because they've never put them through testing for impact resistance, and I wouldn't use them, guys. So cost, that's irrelevant. Certification is what matters. Of course, if you're buying certified iPro that costs more, you tend to get more features, maybe more comfortable, better performance, that type of thing. But for me, these are superb. Bolly trackers, Bolly Tracker 2s, I find them comfortable. I don't have issues with fog when I use anti-fog, and they're only about 15 British pounds a pair. So there you go, guys. It's not cost when it comes to iPro, it's certification. Make sure they're reputable and they've been certified, and then you are good to go. So that is number 3, guys, on today's myths. The next one, number 4, is one that comes up all the time and it always winds me up. We've talked a lot about MOSFETs here on the channel. This is just a Pico. It's a basic MOSFET. And there are a lot of myths surrounding MOSFETs when it comes to Airsoft. The biggest one being that a MOSFET does X, Y, Z, it does all this other stuff. MOSFETs don't, guys. A MOSFET's just effectively a switch. It's a load-bearing switch. So that when you pull your trigger, instead of the current being fired through your trigger contacts or your ETU, the current is fired directly from the battery to the motor by a switching circuit, which uses very low voltage, very low current, so it doesn't burn out your trigger contacts. And that's a MOSFET, guys. That's all a MOSFET does. But in Airsoft, we tend to refer to MOSFETs as everything, like the Gate Titan and that type of thing. Yes, they have a MOSFET built into them, that is part of them, but they are so much more than a MOSFET. And all the features that are included on there has nothing to do with the MOSFET. It's to do with the PCB that's on there and the microprocessor in some cases. If you're replacing your trigger contacts altogether, then that's a trigger replacement. There might be optical sensors on there instead of contacts. It might have an electronic trigger unit that uses microswitches. But ultimately, all those things are extra. A MOSFET, such as this basic thing, a MOSFET is just that. It's just switching. It allows the current to bypass your trigger contacts or trigger unit that you may be using. So that's part of the myth. That, you know, that the MOSFET does all these things, but the bigger myth to do with it is that so many times on social media I've seen people complain of a fault on their replica, and the biggest thing is people, oh, fit a Titan, that'll fix it, fit a Titan, or you've already got an AEG that's got a MOSFET, or change that MOSFET out, put this MOSFET in. That's not the be all and end all fix of every fault on a replica, guys. And at the same time, a lot of people say, oh, fit a MOSFET, you know, you don't have to fit a MOSFET, guys. Don't be under the impression that any replica you have must have a MOSFET. If you want a MOSFET, that's fine, but it doesn't have to have a MOSFET. But again, as we've said many times on the channel, it is one of the best upgrades you can do for a replica. If you don't have a MOSFET already, get a MOSFET installed. But it can be a basic one, guys, and they're not expensive. You don't have to buy high-end unless you want all those additional features that are related to those trigger units. The MOSFET will still give you better trigger response, and it still protects whatever trigger system you are using. However, you know, if you don't need burst fire and programmable features and Bluetooth and all that kind of thing, then, you know, you don't need to get one of those MOSFETs. But again, that's up to you. But the ultimate myth I'm looking at is what a MOSFET is, and that you have to fit one. You really don't, guys. If you're only going to be running 7.4 LiPos or NIMH batteries, you know, I've seen trigger contacts last for years, absolutely years, with heavy use and not burn out. And that's with no MOSFET fitted. And then the other side of that myth as well is that if you have, say, a G&G ARP9, as you all know, I love that replica, The biggest thing people do, again going back to upgrades, as soon as you get it, oh yeah, you've got to change that MOSFET out. You've got to change the MOSFET, it's rubbish. I never found that, guys. My ARP9 is quite old. I got it when they first came out. I did change the MOSFET out, as you know. I did a video on it because everybody was saying about how good the Perrin is. And the Perrin is really good, guys, and a really easy change, and it gives you additional features. And I think that's where the myth comes in. If you want those additional features, then yeah, you can change out. But if you just like it the way it is, there is nothing wrong with that MOSFET that's in there. They've improved them. Mine never burnt out. And again, we go back to, if it breaks, then replace the part that's broke, then upgrade. So there we go, guys. A lot of myths surrounding MOSFETs, what they are, what they do. It's basically just for switching current and prevents burnout of your trigger contacts. All the additional features that come with a lot of MOSFETs these days are all part of the PCB. They're not a MOSFET. They're a replacement trigger unit, or they're a programmable circuit board with a MOSFET fitted on there. So that's that. And if you have a MOSFET on your replica, which a lot of replicas come with basic MOSFETs these days, then unless you want additional performance, you know, you want to change some of the features such as binary trigger and that type of thing, then you really don't need to change it, guys. Until it burns out, it'll be absolutely fine. The MOSFET will do the same job as the MOSFET on a Titan. So this MOSFET is only doing the same as the MOSFET that's fitted on a Titan, just doesn't have all the features associated with Titan trigger unit, and it doesn't replace your trigger contacts. So that's MOSFETs, a little touch on that there. If you want to know more about them, I did do a video on it that's quite lengthy and goes quite technical in depth about MOSFETs. But that's a constant thing. You don't have to change your MOSFET, guys. If you've got one already fitted, great. If you don't, it's a great upgrade. I can strongly recommend putting a MOSFET on. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. Don't feel like you have to put one on straight away, otherwise your replica's going to set fire and stop working. That's just my 2 cents worth. Okay, so that's... Oh, and by no means least, we have number 5, which is a replica itself. Sorry if this ain't fitting on camera right well. This is a G36 replica from SRC. This myth, again, it depends on your budget, it depends on your opinion. But a lot of people say, oh, such a replica is trash. This replica's trash. You have to spend at least this amount, X amount, to get a decent replica. You spend what your budget is, guys. If you get a recommended budget replica, it's going to allow you to have fun on the field. Anything that gets you into this sport, for me, is a bonus, guys. And if you're determined that you want your own replica, but you don't have a lot of money to spend, don't let any kind of snobbery put you off, guys. There's a big myth going around that you can't have fun unless you spend however much on your first replica. You really don't have to, guys. You could get the G36 replicas are bulletproof. That's why I'm showing this one here. The SRC ones, the JG ones, you can get these G36s fairly cheap, guys. Very affordably. They run on a version-free gearbox, and you'll notice that a lot of sites use them as their rental replicas, and that's because they're so reliable. They're not maybe the best performing replica in the world, but it'll work. And that's the main thing when you're starting out, guys. I don't like it when I see somebody's got a new replica and it drops on them on the first game they've ever had, because that's going to put them off the hobby. It's going to put them off the sport and make them not want to play. And I don't want to see that. So reliability is key for your first replica. And if you've got one and you're happy with it, I mean, it still looks the business. I love this thing, and I've got loads of replicas, but I think this one's great. You know, between 100 and 150 British pounds, you can get something like this that's absolutely superb. Looks the part, nice weight with it, good quality plastics. People knock the JG ones, but the JG G36s are absolutely solid, guys. They use them as rentals at my home site. I've worked on a few of them. Multiple years old, 4 or 5 years old in some cases. Again, no MOSFET on them or anything, and they're running day in, day out. And when I've opened them up, they're not too bad at all. They're pretty sturdy, pretty strong replica. And then the other option, guys, is you can get affordable AR-based replicas, such as Spectre. I mean, you step up to about 160, 170 British pounds, you can get yourself a steel AR replica. Well, not steel, but it'll be aluminium, but it's metal. It's full metal, guys. And as a starter replica, again, they'll be basic. They might have a MOSFET on them, but they'll work. G&G, one of my favourite brands. Again, get yourself Combat Master. Very affordable, very basic, but it'll work. Might not have the best performance on the field, but you'll still have fun, guys. It's still great fun, and you've got your own replica and it's yours. And if in the future you find that it's lacking in certain areas, it's a good practice test bench to start practicing doing some upgrades yourself and save yourself a bit more money. So that's the final myth, guys, that you have to spend an absolute fortune on your replica, or spend as much as you can to have a good time on the airsoft field. To me, if you're determined to get your own replica, work within a budget that allows you to get the replica, maybe a couple of spare magazines, and a decent pair of boots and your eye protection. Gear is what's most important when you start, guys. You want to be comfortable on the field, you want to be having a good time, enjoying yourself, making some new friends, and then getting right into it. And then in the future, if you find that it's really for you and you love airsoft, then it's just a money pit. You'll start buying loads of replicas that cost a fortune. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it interesting. I hope, you know, this will help some of you out if you're a bit confused about some of the myths that float around in airsoft. If you did enjoy it, then as always, please drop a like on the video there. If you've got any questions about any of this stuff, or any other myths in airsoft, or any questions for me in general, then drop a comment, as I mentioned below. I'll always respond to a comment. I'll always get back to you. And if you want any more content from myself, you can find Rock Bottom Airsoft on Facebook and Instagram. Bits and bats on there about my goings and doings on airsoft. Been a bit lax on updating it recently, but there should be some more stuff coming on there. And overall, guys, if you've been enjoying my series of videos and you haven't got subscribed yet, then do get subscribed to the channel, and then you won't miss out on stuff like this where I give my opinion on myths. But apart from that, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.